Hey, good morning. This is Stephanie Pointer, and I'm here today with Lynn Hurtak, Councilwoman Hurtak, to talk. We're going to focus primarily, after we get the basic Lynn out of her, we're going to focus talking about the housing workshop that we had the other day and what the prospective next move is and what we think were the good ideas and the good points from the workshop the other day. So, Lynn, do you want to start out by telling us the basic Lynn, just giving us who you are and where you came from and how you got to where you are today?
Thanks. And thanks for having me on today. I am Councilwoman Lynn Hurtak. I represent District 3, which is citywide. And I have been on council for about 2 years, almost 2 years now. And I was appointed after John Dingfelder left his seat. And before that, I have been a neighborhood advocate for many years. I was the vice president of Old Seminole Heights Neighborhood Association and involved with Old Seminole Heights for about 7 years. And I also served on the city's variance review board, looking at land use cases. And before that, I was on the city's charter review commission with Bill Carlson. Also several other former council members.
Well, thank you. You want to start out? I know that housing has really been a passion for you since you got on council, and I know for a fact that when you were neighborhood leader, we worked together on some housing when we were first getting stood up. But how do you? Let's talk about how you feel about the housing situation that we're in the city of Tampa.
The housing situation is terrible. Obviously, there's not enough housing and more people keep moving here. And it's particularly bad for people who make 50% and below of the area median income, also known as AMI. And right now they have new numbers for that. And in our area, the current area median income is $71,540. That's a lot, I think, because I think there's a lot of people that don't quite make that.
Absolutely. There are a lot of folks who don't make it, including city council members.
That is true.
It's a personal pet peeve of mine. It may not be yours, but it's my pet peeve. So.
Yes, but we really are struggling with housing for pretty much everyone, but particularly those 50% and below of AMI. And mainly right now, the biggest reason that that's so expensive is because we don't have the housing stock to put people in, but building housing right now is so expensive that it far outweighs what folks can pay. And our workshop on Thursday said that just to get the 26,000 units of affordable housing we need, it would cost over $5 billion with a B dollars. And considering that our city our budget is healthy at $1.9 billion, it would take more than 2 years of funding nothing but affordable housing to only get the 26,000 units, when the reality is we need, including market rate and beyond, more like twice that, in the 50,000s is what we really need.
One of the things that was presented and it's proposed for our future comprehensive plan is the addition of, if a developer wants to build 100 units, they would be able to, on a lot, they are allowed to build 100. And then if they came to the city and said, hey, I'd like to build 125, and we would make 10 of those, and I'm just using loosey-goosey numbers, we would make 10 of those affordable. How do you feel about that plan, with where it doesn't really technically cost the city anything, but it allows in certain places for developers to purchase or make more units on their property, which means that they're going to be more profitable while we also get affordable housing units? How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's great because it's free. I mean, to us, pretty much, it's free. And we have a budget of how we can spend money toward housing, but the best way to do it is we have to have for-profit developers as a part of the solution, and a major part, there's no way that we're going to be able, and we shouldn't be in the business of building and holding on to housing just because our city is not big enough for that. And we have some really good nonprofit partners, but also the fact that we want people to be able, people who need housing to live anywhere. And if you're building a for-profit, just a regular builder's, townhomes, or not, I'm sorry, not townhomes, but if you're building a condo tower or apartment tower, yeah, if you're willing to put a quarter of those units to be affordable, we're willing to let you go higher and to build more units. And I think that's that right now we only allow developers to do 10% or 25%. But if we, one of the things that we're bringing forward in this future comprehensive plan update is being able to go up to 100% of that. So if you have a space where you could build, I don't know, 4 stories and maybe 20 units, but if you're going to add, you want to add 10 units of affordable housing, then we're going to let you double that and go up to 40. I mean, it's a sliding scale, and it will balance out depending on the land you have and where it is and all that. But the concept is you weren't stopped at 10%.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really important, because if you're only going to give 10% of housing in a lot of these developments, that's maybe 15 units. And that's great. Right. But we're going to 15 or 10 unit our way out of 26,000 units.
Right. I completely agree. And I think that we also have to stand back and take a look at if we had that in place 5 years ago when I started dealing with housing and land use and all that good stuff, just south of Gandy, we would have had the equivalent of, and I'm talking about 5 units, 5%, or 5 units or 5%. We would have the equivalent of a whole, 200 units just south of Gandy. And I think that by not having something like that in place for so long, for the last 4 or 5 years, it really is, it's detrimental, because we missed a lot of opportunities, and city council couldn't sit up on the dais and say, hey, where's the affordable in this? And there was a little sprinkling of it here and there. But technically they're not allowed to. So yeah. It's really, I think, going to be very important in the next 5 years or so that we have this system set in place. And, and the fact that we're talking about it publicly doesn't mean that a developer can't come right now and ask for it. And they can ask for this deal now. They don't have to wait until after the comprehensive plan is in place. They can go to council and ask for it now. And that's one of the things that I stand on a soapbox about, because there's a lot of conversation about missing middle, but yet nobody asked to build missing middle. Yeah. What they want to build is so much larger than what missing middle can be afforded. And I've had developers tell me, I want to build 42 units in there. I'm like, okay, so how much are they going to cost? Well, they're going to cost 500, 600,000. I'm like, well, can't you make them smaller? I'm okay with more density, quote unquote, if you made them smaller so they could be 300,000. Yeah, so they're more affordable. And that's the real crook of the matter, is we're not getting as much of that as we need. And just like around me, I have 350 units that they'll be opening in the next. They've already got people living there. So, but it's coming online now, 350 units. Across from me, I have 1,400 units, I have 216 units. They are offering 2 months free rent right now. They've been open for 14 months, so they're not full. I've got 500 units down the road. They have over 40 units available right now. So they're at less than, they've got more than 10% available. And I'm like, but nobody can afford to live there.
Yeah.
How do we make that something that we can utilize immediately is what I guess my question. We talked about buying down for home ownership, but I would even offer that buying down for rentals wouldn't be a bad thing.
I think that's part of what the things they're looking at, and maybe not going out to the at market, but we're definitely talking about preserving affordability. And I think part of that might either be purchasing apartments or working with the ones we currently already have deals with to continue to keep them affordable.
Yes, Dave is absolutely correct. And that's part of the plan. You want to talk about ADUs for a second, Lynn?
Sure. Keeping elders in their home by allowing ADU code changes it'll add more rentals, but it will also do the opposite. And it will add, right now, in order to rent, you have to live in the primary house. So if you're an older person who doesn't need as much space, doesn't want the upkeep, would prefer to live in the ADU and rent out the main house, you can't do that. It's against city code. So yeah, and so that's one of the things we're looking at is, hey, yes, you want to build this ADU and you want to live in it because it's smaller and it's ADA accessible. My mom bought a condo several years ago, downsized. She and my father downsized from a house, a 2-story house. And one of the reasons she really wanted the unit was because it was ADA accessible. And so she could age in place. And so I think it's really important that these people are allowed to age in place, but then also can be landlords of a house that they know intimately. And I mean, I'm a landlord. I know you're a landlord, but the houses I have rented out have either been houses I've lived in or I've spent a lot of time in. So I know their peculiarities, I guess. Right. So I know what tends to go wrong and what doesn't work. So that's important. So you know who to call. You have your plumber, you have your electrician, and so I think that is going to be one of the best things we can do for our population that's aging, allowing them to even stay in their neighborhood, stay on the land, but then opening up a 3 or 4 bedroom house to a young family who really needs the actual space. And whether or not that's a family member is, right now it would have to be a family member. Right. And even at that, even if it is a family member, you cannot be the one that lives in the ADU. If you're the older person, you have to be in the main house. And I mean, I know a lot of folks don't really want to live with their kids and grandkids 24/7 if they don't have to. So having that space to themselves is really nice. But also it is but it's also good for rentals. It really is. Now, the problem that a lot of people bring up is a very true problem, and it's the Airbnb problem. And I don't fault anyone for being concerned about that. I live next door to a unit that was a Airbnb. So, but I knew the owner really well. So if there was ever an issue, but the thing is, the state has preempted us, and it looks like they're going even further in this legislative session about further preemptions. And I don't know if that's actually the case. I think it's more of an issue. Again, I don't know. I don't like to prejudge what the legislature is going to do till it's over, and then I just kind of go back and see what's been done. But the thing is, if we build a bunch more ADUs, it's sort of like everything else. Airbnb can only be so profitable. Right. At some point, it won't be profitable, and then they're going to have to switch back. And if you've noticed, if you look at rentals, and I do this, I watch the rental market. There are a lot of rentals right now that are fully furnished and come with everything. It's because they've gotten out of the Airbnb market because it's no longer lucrative. Exactly. So while I understand that, I think that that's one of the things that, since we have no power over, we have to let the market figure it out. Exactly. I'd like to remind everybody that if you'd like to call in and ask Lynn a question, the number is 727-214-4930. And I have to agree with you. I think the short-term rental market and even the long-term rental market is shifting. I had a conversation about my houses with another realtor today, and he says that's too high because the rental market is shifting, and that's all I do. And I agreed with him, but and what I'm seeing online in some of the big yard sale groups and the big
swap and shop groups, is you will see whole houses full of furniture for sale, because the folks are starting to walk away from Airbnb because it's become very controversial. It's not as profitable as it was. And some of the Airbnb groups, I saw a considerable amount of folks who were really not very happy with the whole process as they thought they would be. They were like, oh, this is going to be easy money. And what they found was it's a lot of work and it's very hard. So I'm hoping that we'll see more of a shift and get those units back out on the long-term market, which is where they need to be to start with.
100% agree. And I think everything is a market shift. I know that rents have gone down paltry amount, so it's not very good at all. But I'm hoping between that and, as you said, some of the signs we're seeing around town of 2 months free rent, right, things like that will start to move the needle. But it really doesn't matter. It's not going to be enough. We have
absolutely not.
We can't wait for the market. We have to build our way out. And the only way we can build is to look at many different ways of allowing people to live in housing, which is our primary goal. That will really help with the homeless population too, keeping people in their homes and building more housing as quickly as possible.
And I think utilizing the ADUs for one of the things that you said that resonates with me, because of my business as a property manager, is when somebody lives in the accessory dwelling unit and they are personally, that people who live in a home because they bought it because they love it, they take a different kind of care versus an investor. And so, I'm very, very particular about who I take on as clients, and I only have a handful of exceptions to that investment versus homeowner rule for myself. Let's see. Dave said, I don't think most elders want an Airbnb in their main home. What I heard at Sulphur Springs is to move into the smaller unit and rent the non-family, the main portion, somebody else's main portion. And this leaves them at home and slowly gentrifying because they now pass 2 homes to their children. And I think that's a really good point, Dave.
Yeah, no, it's 100% the case. And I think a lot of folks do. That's what I'm hearing more and more from our aging population, is that they know their neighbors. They don't want to leave that. There's a lot of security in that. Like, I love knowing who my neighbors are. I think a lot of us do. It doesn't matter if you're a renter or you're an owner. You know, even if you don't know them well, you at least know who they are. You know who's coming in and out. And you do have somebody on your block you can reach to in a pinch, or on your floor if you live in an apartment. So I think it's one of those things that people really value. But as folks get older and they're homeowners, they don't really want to leave the places they know so well and that they're comfortable with, but they don't need a 4-bedroom house to maintain anymore, or at least they need help with it. And by being able to put a renter in, you're going to be able to afford those costs. And I think that is a bigger issue. And that's the one thing that staff talked about at the end that we haven't really figured out, is how to fund that. What does that look like? And the main reason for that is the insurance companies have been really slow to insure a secondary dwelling unit. Therefore it's harder to get the cost to actually build one. So that's the entire reason that my husband and I moved to Tampa, was because we needed an ADU for his office space, and he works out of the ADU on our property. And it doesn't matter what it looks like, how well it's been done. That property, we could only get insurance for $60,000.
Wow.
I don't know if that's changed now. I think it might have, but not really. And so that's a big issue.
That's interesting, because to build a new ADU is in the $150,000 range.
Exactly. And you can't insure that now.
No. Wow.
So, but that is changing. So I've heard from some insurance companies or from folks who work in the areas that they are definitely looking at that because it's becoming something that's not just popular here in the city of Tampa, but all over the country.
So one of the things that I thought was really interesting in the in the housing goals and the quantitative targets was the reduction in racial homeownership gap. I thought that was just, maybe I'm just missing it. Maybe I wasn't paying much attention, but for, they really wanted, I think it's important to notice that we have a huge gap in white folks owning homes versus black folks versus Hispanic folks, and what that is, and I like that that's one of the goals. I thought that was very interesting, and how they'll move forward on that.
And I just want to mention Dave Coleman's talking the possibility of city shelters for the homeless before I move on. Yes, and we're still looking at larger properties in which to do that, but right now real estate's just kind of crazy. But I do think that extending service for the homeless population is a big part right now, especially we're dealing with a lot of families. But back to your point, Stephanie, absolutely. And the thing that actually worries me more than anything is, I don't remember who mentioned it on Thursday, but who isn't getting phone calls and text messages and mailers about selling their house? And some of our elders don't know that that's a scam. They don't know that they aren't going to be able to find anything afterward. They don't know. And then they think that they're doing something good for their kids, but really they just let go of an incredibly large part of inheritance. So how do we keep people in those homes, working on homeowner rehab, and then finding ways to make sure that that goes to the next generation?
Absolutely. That, because it does happen. And I mean, the new scam is to go down and file a fake deed, and do a quick thing. And so, making sure that your elders understand that, hey, you have to tell those people no from the start, and don't even have a conversation with them. Because it used to be they just steal a $500 gift card. Now they want to steal your whole stinking house.
Yes, and it's getting worse and worse and scarier and scarier. And I'm on a lot of stuff from my mom. I'm even getting things from trying to get me to sell my mom's house. It's like,
I believe it.
So I make sure to talk to her about that when just making sure that she knows. And that's something that we can all do for the elders in our lives, is just make sure that they know that, or if they get something like that and they're not sure about it, to bring it to someone and let them explain it. So I encourage people to bring that, to bring those types of things to family or friends if they're curious and don't know what to do with it.
How about, do you want to talk for a minute about the parts of town that are the best places for where the planners say that we're supposed to have more density and more housing over time, and why?
Sure. The first thing is to not put the housing in the coastal high hazard area. And that has been something that I've really focused on strongly. We approved a development a while back, just right in the middle. They were going to have to build it up, I think 20 feet just to start, just even the parking lot. And that, to me, as a rental units, and that worries me for people leaving, but also just, it's your house, it's your stuff. We really shouldn't be building anymore in the coastal high hazard area. And we can't tell people not to live there, but it's just becoming scarier and scarier as storms strengthen, as sea level rise happens, as we're starting to see king tides make their way into Tampa. They used to be just something you heard about in Miami, but now I'm hearing about king tides in South Tampa. And to focus on transit corridors. I know that some people think that that's not something we should be doing right now because we don't have transit, but it's kind of a chicken or egg thing. We can't say we shouldn't because we don't have transit, but then we have to start somewhere. And right now, since housing is something that people really, really want and really, really need, that's where we can push the envelope. And then from there, work on transit. And I mean, I live on right off of Florida Avenue, and the Hearts 1 route goes past my house every 15 minutes. It's great. I use it, and I think it's really wonderful. So it does happen. So putting housing on transit corridors works, and putting housing in areas where we don't have housing right now, or we don't have the density that we could have. So there's the Central Planning District, West Shore, North University Area Planning District.
Yeah.
There's some spaces in South Tampa along, I think it's Dale Mabry, that is that corridor. But I'm hesitant on that because of how quickly that's going to become part of the coastal high hazard area.
Right, so exactly. It won't be long.
No, I don't think it'll be another 10 years.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
But, how do you stop people from moving where they think, into a popular area? And so it's that delicate balance. But I think that we are creating more popular areas, and which is really kind of cool. That's actually one of the things I love the most about Tampa, is that we have these different neighborhoods that are so interesting to go into. West Shore used to really be thought of as kind of the airport and just airport adjacent and mall. And now it has a lot more things. Yes. So it's becoming more of a neighborhood. They've always been houses there, but there hasn't been the need to go unless you were going to the mall, which is insular. So that's, I like what I'm seeing there. And we're working really hard on areas in East Tampa as well. I know I think quite a few of the infill phase 3 housing lots are in East Tampa.
Heidi, is Keela still on, or was she not able to stay on?
So I think she did jump on. I invited her to. I told her to because she was late. She was scheduled to be with both of you.
Okay.
But I told her to come on even though she was driving. But I think that the noise in the background while she was traveling freaked her out and she jumped off.
That's okay. I was just, if we were going to East Tampa, I wanted to take her with us.
We can come back.
Yeah, we can come back for sure. But let's see. I don't know. But I think housing along those corridors is going to be important, and it's going to be important that it's stepped down to the individual neighborhoods, because we're going to have to address that. You can't build a 30-story building next door to a 1-story home, because they're going to be in the shade all the time, and that's not fair. Nobody moves to Florida to live in the shade. So
that's true. And again, I think I live, like I said, 1 block off of Florida Avenue. And so Florida Avenue can take quite a bit of density. Even in Seminole Heights right now, it's 4 stories. But the property directly behind that, which is right across the street from me, the future density for that is townhomes, which is, again, the perfect. So Seminole Heights' future land use is already, and you see that in pretty much all over the city. That is the plan already, to step down density as you get further into single family neighborhoods. And I think that is absolutely imperative and important, and also adds more to the walkability of the neighborhood, because you're able to have that apartment complex, maybe a few shops below, and then you step down to the townhomes, and just anything that encourages the streetscape along that area to draw people from the neighborhood into some of that commercial work and then back, I think is really important. One of the things I've really loved, I live right next to the Haight apartment complex, and we were really worried about the density. The neighborhood was worried about the density and the parking. And what we found is that when people moved in, it's a dog-friendly building. So all of a sudden we have, I think there's 81 units. And almost all of them have dog owners, because that's a huge benefit. People are always looking for places to live that take dogs. Yep. So we have people walking all over our streets now, and which has helped slow down traffic. And we do have a few cars that park on side streets, but they've also helped slow down traffic. And we
Exactly.
hadn't thought about that as a benefit. And it actually turns out that having more neighbors with their eyes on the neighborhood, walking, stopping cars from speeding through our area, because cut through has become a way of life in the city of Tampa.
Right.
So really helping to slow all that down. I don't think the neighbors, we really had any idea that we were going to have that type of that the apartment complex would have that type of impact.
Yeah, the positive.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, the positives. And
okay, is the city using Live Local state money or plan to, and can they?
Live Local, from my understanding, is developers coming in and using the land use of either industrial and some of those higher density uses, or rather high industrial type uses and commercial uses, and then turning that into housing. We've seen, the only project that we have seen is a 1339 project, and that was the precursor to Live Local. And there's a project that we just approved that's going in at McKinley Drive, and I want to say that's Fletcher, Fowler, right across from USF. And that,
yes.
Yeah, so that's office buildings being turned into apartments. And so they're going to be 7 or 8 stories. It's going to have almost 600 some odd units. So that did have to come to council for approval. But again, this is not a council that's anti density and development. We can't be. We need housing so desperately. And it was the perfect place for it. It was much better use than the office building that's currently there. And they could have gone through the rezoning route, but they chose to do the 1339 instead. And we had some suggestions, and they took them, and the community had suggestions. So I actually really like the 1339 process. I expect us to see more things like that. I don't know that Live Local. I believe the 1339 will also have some affordable units, but the requirement of the affordability will stop people. It doesn't mean that we won't have Live Local projects. I just don't think we've had one yet. I believe the county has had several.
I don't think so either. The last time I asked, the answer was no. There were a couple proposed and discussed, but nobody's ever brought it, and nobody's filed anything as far as I've heard. One thing that you brought up at council the other day that I thought was a very unique is the upstairs conversion program for businesses that have upstairs vacant space. When my dad owned glass companies in Nashville, we had a huge upstairs that sat vacant almost exclusively. It was just a giant storage space. And they actually finished part of it and put a restroom in up there once upon a time, but it would have been a premier. You could probably put 3 or 4 units in up there that were big enough for 3-4 bedroom houses. So I think that's a brilliant idea.
Well, it came about because some of the CRAs didn't know how they could fit use 30% of their funds on affordable housing. They didn't really know what that would look like. And so my thought for Ybor especially was, hey, when there's all those stores along 7th Avenue and there's nothing above them. Now, granted, it takes a special someone to want to live right above 7th Avenue, but that's the perfect place for a bartender to live, or a perfect place for a bouncer or people who work in those late night industries to live.
Or even Drew Park's heavily commercial as well, and that'd be a great place to make facilities for somebody to live where they work.
Yeah, West Tampa has that same. Any of our neighborhoods that have, and in fact, there's quite a few in East Tampa as well, where they have these it was traditional. It's what people used to do. They worked downstairs and lived upstairs. And a lot of these buildings are just not in either in disrepair or they're using the bottom and then using the top for storage. But now to be able to give those grants so that people could fix that upstairs space to bring it into compliance. And I think that's the biggest issue, is bringing it up to code, to current code. But the city in the CRAs right now, I don't think it's a full citywide program yet to help them bring it into compliance. And as the payment for that, saying, okay, for the next however many years, you need to maintain this as an affordable unit.
Right.
And I think that's a win-win for everyone. It brings the landowner more rent, but then also allows them to bring it up to code and do all of that without having to shell out a bunch of money.
Absolutely.
And then also provide housing.
Oh, let's talk about a motion you made. Are you asked to come back to the motion? Because this is something that I gotta say, it wasn't my idea. Andy Joe has brought it up several times. Is that the city has kind of been backwards, is how I put it, about their doing due diligence prior to making an offer.
Yeah.
Other investors make an offer, and then they use that inspection period to do their due diligence. And I'm so excited that you said, "Hey, staff, let's change this." And thank you very much for that.
Well, again, as an investor myself, that is what we did multiple times before buying our income property. Just because you want to make sure you have it, but you got to make sure it's the right space, and you go and you do all of your due diligence. And I often wondered why the city didn't do that. So just finding out that all we had to do was change the policy, that's so simple. But that's the kind of thing. And I'm bringing forward a few other things as well along those lines that we talked about. And I wish I could remember right now. I know there's another one that we're bringing forward. And just some of those ideas. And even Bill said, hey, we didn't know about this. If all we had to do was change the rules, we can do that.
Right.
And that's to help speed things along. And like you said, the statistic that shocked me that we got at either the beginning of the presentation or I had in my prep meeting was that there's 4% of the land in the city of Tampa is vacant and available.
Wow.
4%.
That's not much.
No, we cannot single family build our way out of this. We just can't do it.
Right.
And there's nothing, I think preserving our neighborhoods for what they are is very important, but also realize we are going to have to include density where we can, reusing spaces, adding density to low density spaces, because otherwise we aren't going to be able to keep people here. And I don't want our city to become I don't really know if this is true, but like a San Francisco where everybody, wealthy people live in the city and everybody else lives outside the city. And I don't want that. That's not a vibrant, exciting city. And you want people to live near where they work so that they don't have to drive their cars or have a car if they can't afford it. The thing that I was most concerned about too is the fact that we have 53% that's average citizens in Tampa spend an average of 53% on housing and transportation. That's a lot when you're only supposed to be spending 30% on housing max.
That's right. It's absolutely vicious how much money we are spending on housing and transportation. Well, Lynn, do you have any closing remarks? Anything that I didn't ask you that you want to tell everybody about the housing in Tampa, or a call to action, or whatever you wanted to say?
The first thing I wanted to do was just say how proud of the city's land development team. Nicole Travis has done an amazing job with her department, and I want to give kudos to everyone there. They did a phenomenal job and a great presentation. And then, yes, if this is important to you, we need to make sure that this stays funded. We are going to start the new cycle for the 2025 budget coming up soon. We cannot allow housing to get off of the radar. We need to bring housing to the budget all the budget meetings. We need to make sure that council, that those for whom housing is important keep the pressure on, so we don't forget what we've already done. We funded housing. We need to continue to fund housing. They gave us a number that would help, and I believe that should just simply be our baseline. 25 million, I believe, is what they ask for every year to help these programs move along. And again, some of that's coming out of the CRA. So I believe, but even if not, 25 million out of a $1.9 billion budget is really doable.
Absolutely. I agree. I completely agree, because the more money we spend on housing, the less money we're going to have to spend on our police force. It's going to cure a lot of issues in our city by having a roof over everybody's head.
Well, and those roofs over people's heads pay taxes.
That's right.
And as we do that, we're going to get more money for the things that we really need. We have a lot of needs in the city, there's no doubt, but funding all of those priorities with more housing, it's really a win-win. It's just that initial outlay. And I think that's what we just need to remind ourselves of. For every dollar we put in, we make multiple dollars back in other ways.
Well, thank you very much for coming and being on with us today, Lynn. We really do appreciate it. And thank you for all you do for our city. You are fighting for the citizens every day. As a neighborhood leader, I'm always in awe of how hard you work, because I'm right there watching. So thank you very much, and we appreciate you coming on Florida You Judge today. And I'm sorry Keela didn't get here. Maybe we can have you call in sometime soon and have a little sidebar conversation about East Tampa for a minute. And
absolutely.
But thank you very much, and you have a good weekend.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and I really enjoy the conversation. Y'all have a great rest of your weekend too, and I'm sure I'll talk to you soon.